This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening. The caucus meeting of November 15th, 2022 will now come to order at 7:46 p.m. Present are Council President Brossard, Council members Gilchrist, Glassburn, Heeman, Kelly, Limpert, Scarl, and Williamson. The Mayor, Law Director, Finance Director, HR Director, Safety Director, Special Assistant to the Mayor, and guests. If there are no additions or corrections, the caucus meeting minutes of November 1st, 2022 are approved as written. Regarding suspension of the rules, there are 3 items on the agenda this evening being requested for suspension. The first is Ordinance 2022-105 on second reading. Mayor Jones, would you like to speak to this one?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll have Finance Director Kopfer address council regarding the transfer ordinance, please.
Yes. Hello, Mr. President. This was approved for suspension at council committee meeting last week. This is a transfer ordinance, and we want to get the appropriations changed so that we can move forward with the expenditures that are waiting for this ordinance to pass.
All right, thank you. Are there any objections from any council members to suspension on 105? Okay. Also being requested for suspension is Resolution 2022-112 on first reading. Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. This resolution is declaring Saturday, November 26, 2022 as Small Business Saturday in the city of North Olmsted. This is a national celebration for local small businesses and the contributions that small business make towards our economies and our communities. It is an effort that is recognized at both the state and the federal level, and they have asked now that local communities also highlight the small businesses in their area, especially during the holiday time. So Small Business Saturday is always held on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So you have Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, and this has been an effort to, again, make sure that our communities are supporting our small businesses during this holiday season. The reason we're asking for suspension is because the next time council will meet with us will be after the 26th. So we would ask that you please recognize this day in the city of North Olmsted by supporting this resolution. And just so that you're aware, we are going around, the Economic Development Director and I and our communications manager have been going around and highlighting some small businesses in some video shoots that we are going to make available on our website and through the city's social media outlets so that our community can learn a little bit more about the small businesses that are here in North Olmsted, and then can also go and do some of their holiday shopping there as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any objections from council to suspension on 2022-112? Okay, thank you. Let the record reflect also that the Recreation and Service Directors are also present. Lastly, being requested for suspension is Resolution 2022-113 on first reading. Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really want to speak to Resolution 113 because it's about a Journey tribute band, something that Councilwoman Gilchrist and I have long wanted to come here to North Olmsted, but I am going to let Director Pinchuk address council regarding this issue.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry to steal your thunder on this one. We were fortunate enough to be able to reach an agreement with Dr. Seuss Entertainment to provide a concert at the North Olmsted Park for Escape 3. They are a Journey tribute band, as the mayor has mentioned, and they are very hard to to secure. They are a national act. We don't want to lose time, and that is the reason, the request for suspension of rules on emergencies, so we can sign a contract with them and lock them in for our end of the season concert, August 12th at North Olmsted Park of 2023. We're super excited. In fact, this band has been mentioned by the Journey band themselves as being the closest to sounding of Journey as any other tribute band out there. So we're really excited.
Thank you, Director. Don't stop believing, right?
That's right.
Okay. Any objections from council to suspension on 113? Ms. Heeman?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's not an objection, it's a comment. There's actually an entire documentary about this band and Journey. So I am equally excited to have them come. I paid a lot of money to see some of these Journey bands. So thank you. Good call, Mayor.
Thank you. And Mr. Limpert?
Yeah, I just had a question as I opened my arms and faithfully asked the director, what's the cost involved with this?
So great question. So it is a little bit more costly for a band, but they are playing for 3 hours. So the cost is $7,500 for their performance. For a national act, that is cheap. Concerning some of the other bands that are in the range of about $3,500 to $3,000 that are not as well known across the nation.
Okay. And Mr. Glasper, you're just gonna have to deal with all the Journey references because Journey.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Broussard, Ms.
B-
Williamson, I think.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could we just wish Mr. Glassburn a happy birthday this evening?
Well, you just did.
Thank you.
I'll be sure to do that during the regular meeting. We'll double dip.
I'm glad to spend with all of you.
Now I understand why who's crying now, Mr. Glassburn. It's her birthday, huh? Feeling older.
Wow.
Oh my
Let's
God, this is so
get-
cheesy.
I think this is a really good moment to move into assigning legislation. Resolutions 2022-108, 109, and 111, as well as ordinance 2022-118 will be assigned to public safety, health, and welfare. Resolutions 2022-110, 112, as well as ordinances 2022-114 and 115, and resolution 2022-119 will be assigned to finance. And then lastly, resolution 2022-113, ordinance 2022-116, resolutions 2022-117 and 120 will be assigned to recreation, public parks, and buildings. The option for council, committees, and boards and commissions to hold virtual meetings will expire at the end of this year. Are there any concerns or comments to possibly make a motion to extend that option until March 31st, 2023? Okay, I don't see any objections. Mr. Scarl, go ahead.
No, I was going to make a motion if we needed one to extend it.
I'll ask the law director, can we do this during caucus, or does it have to be on the floor of council?
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's do that motion on the floor of council.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And so additionally, we're going to schedule a special council meeting for Tuesday, November 29th, 2022 at 8:00 p.m. for the purpose of moving current legislation along to meet end of year deadlines, as well as introducing the 2023 budget, an engineering contract, and trash pickup legislation. So moving into scheduling committee meetings for next Tuesday. Councilwoman Williamson, Public Safety, Health and Welfare.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will schedule the meeting for November 22nd at 7 p.m. I would ask the mayor or her designee to be present. And I would say maybe 10 minutes. I know some of these are renewals, so I know that it shouldn't be too lengthy of a discussion.
Okay, sounds good. And then moving into finance, Councilman Glassburn.
I'd like to start at 7:10, and I'd like at least 15 minutes.
Sounds good. And last but not least, Councilwoman Heeman for Recreation, Public Parks and Buildings.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will have 7:25 until, well, I guess I'm last, but I'm going to say that we could be discussing 2022-116 for a little bit of time. So I would like to have a block of time. I'll put on the schedule just 20 minutes, but I would expect really that it could go 30 for all of my pieces of legislation, 16, 17, and 120.
Okay. So does anyone on council have anything else they wish to bring up this evening? Councilman Kelly?
Apologize for my issues with my computer during this time. Fortunately, I called Mr. Massarello and he told me how to fix it. So I'm here. I just was unable to use my microphone for some reason to switch the phone.
Okay, you're good to go. Okay. And anything from the administration this evening?
No, Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Seeing nothing else, the caucus meeting of November 15th, 2022 is adjourned at 7:58 p.m.
This conference will now be recorded.
The council meeting of November 15th, 2022 will now please come to order at 8:00 p.m. Just a note for those of you who wish to address council tonight via this virtual format, council is asking that you please use the chat feature now to let Clerk Taylor know that you have a comment, and you will be called on during the comment portion of the meeting. If you are calling on a phone or you do not have access to the chat feature, we will give directions during the public comment portion of our meeting to provide the opportunity for you to speak. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Broussard.
Present.
Ms. Gilchrist.
Here.
Mr. Glassburn.
Here.
Ms. Heeman.
Here.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Lippert.
Present.
Mr. Scarl.
Here.
Ms. Williamson.
Here.
Thank you. As mentioned during the caucus meeting earlier this evening, we have a major announcement in that today is Councilman Glassburn's birthday, so we'd like to wish him a happy birthday again. We won't ask you your age. Moving into approval of minutes, if there are no additions or corrections, the council meeting minutes of November 1st, 2022 are approved as written. And the following legislation is being considered for suspension of the rules this evening. On second reading is ordinance 2022-105. On first reading is resolution 2022-112. Also on first reading, resolution 2022-113. Moving into reports, Mayor Daley Jones, do you have a report this evening?
I do, Mr. President. Thank you. Good evening. Wanted to advise City Council that our longtime City Hall receptionist, Mary Ann Simmons, has retired after 23 years of loyal and devoted service. I proclaimed last Monday, November 7th, as Mary Ann Simmons Day in the city of North Olmsted and presented her with a proclamation. And I share this leading into my next item for council is that the city will be implementing a new auto attendant telephone system within the next 2 weeks. Recording of the auto attendant script will be done tomorrow. The city of North Olmsted will celebrate Small Business Saturday on Saturday, November 26th. Small Business Saturday is a marketing initiative originally created and promoted by the American Express credit card brand to encourage holiday shopping on the Saturday after Thanksgiving in the United States during one of the busiest shopping periods of the year. We encourage everyone to shop in North Olmsted every day, but especially on this special Saturday. Our Director of Economic and Community Development and I have been visiting local small businesses and doing video spotlight segments with them, which will be posted on our social media platforms as well as our city website starting next week. Interviews for new firefighter positions are being held this week. And Ohio Governor Mike DeWine and the Ohio Committee for Severe Weather Awareness recognized November 13th through 19th, 2022 as Winter Safety Awareness Week. Our North Olmsted Recreation and Public Engagement Department is gearing up for Holiday Hangout, which will take place from 5 until 8 p.m. on December 2nd at the North Olmsted Community Cabin. This free event will include a variety of activity stations for families and children to enjoy, including a letter writing station to Santa, candy cane fishing, a hot cocoa station, a holiday ornament making station, a station where you can pin the tail on Rudolph, and a ring toss station, among others. There will also be a DJ spinning holiday tunes, and we'll be showing the movie A Christmas Story. Council members, volunteers are needed to staff the event and activity stations, and we would love to have you come and help us with this event. Yesterday, I was privileged to swear in Mike Kovach as the newest member of the Building and Zoning Board of Appeals Commission, and tonight I have just come from the North Olmsted Arts Commission meeting where I had the honor to swear in Sean McGrath as the newest commission member. Interestingly, as we came to find out during his interview, Sean is an operatic tenor. And speaking of the Arts Commission, the Commission will be sponsoring a holiday home decorating contest. More details will be forthcoming after tonight's Art Commission meeting. Last week, I had the opportunity to join some 8th grade girls who are members of Girl Scout Troop 70645 in doing some volunteerism at North Olmsted's Oxcart Food Pantry. As we gear up for the holiday season this year, I'll remind you all that hunger never takes a holiday. The pantry is always seeking volunteers to help, and likewise, they are always in need of donations of food. If you can volunteer or donate, please do so. Last Friday, the city and the school district sponsored a salute to veterans at the North Olmsted High School Performing Arts Center. I was privileged to be asked to deliver some welcoming remarks, and many veterans, including those from World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, and Afghanistan, were in attendance. Earlier in the week, I was privileged, along with our city directors, to accompany the cremains of 2 veterans to their final resting place at the Ohio Western Reserve National Cemetery in Brittman. Their cremains, along with 38 others, including 6 who are also veterans, were discovered in our closet in the service department. We continued the difficult task to identify each individual's cremains and will not stop until each receives a dignified and proper burial. And a final reminder, with Thanksgiving next week, I wanted you to be aware that City Hall will be closed on both Thursday, November 24th and Friday, November 25th. I wish you all a blessed Thanksgiving and hope you enjoy that time with your families. And Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Director of Law Garreau, do you have a report this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Broussard. It's good to see you. I hope you're on the road to wellness, and I wish very good. And I wish you all a blessed Thanksgiving holiday coming up. Just a quick note, something kind of interesting about 2022-118. That's the contract for demolition of an unsafe structure. at 28757 Oring here in North Olmsted. Kind of a different route that we took to that. You know, we have some of these properties that drop into foreclosure, and as they drop into foreclosure, the owner's missing, and the mortgage holder who seeks to foreclose on the lien, they don't do anything to maintain the property. So what we did in this instance is we actually had moved to intervene and become a party in the foreclosure action, which we had not had success doing before. We were able to do that in this case, which it just want to let you know, give us another tool to try to get some leverage to get these properties taken care of. Now, unfortunately, there was an administrative order to tear the building down because it was in such a condition, and it did take quite a bit of time, unfortunately, to do that. But we're at the point now where we can finally ask for your assistance in getting a contractor to tear that down, with the expectation then that we can receive compensation, refunds, or reimbursements for the costs associated with that. We've done a few of these over the years, but not any of them quite like this. But I will also note that because we have people, we have lawyers involved, that we are also seeking to continue to get them to do the same thing without us having to spend the money. We have no idea what the demolition costs are going to look like in 2022 with labor costs and everything else increasing exponentially. It's usually about $10,000, $11,000 in the past, but we really don't know what it's going to be. So, one, we're going to continue to try to see if we can get the bank to take care of this problem, and if not, we're going to go forward with this legislation. We want you to approve the legislation after next committee meetings, so that we can, if they don't do it, we will, because the residents in that neighborhood deserve to have a neighborhood that's free of these blighted structures that take everybody's property values down. So, looking for interesting and creative ways to try to get to that result, and this was just one of them I thought I'd share with you. So, thank you, Mr. President. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Director. Director of Finance Kopfer, do you have a report this evening?
Yes, I do, Mr. President. CBIZ appraisers were on site for 3 days last week, and I want to thank Sean Stacy, CJ Woke, and Greg Peters for taking them around to all our buildings and structures while they collected their data for the appraisal. On Wednesday, November 9th, we sold our bond anticipation notes. This was a difficult sale because investors, as you know, have had higher rate earning potential with other investment vehicles, such as treasury bills rather than muni bond anticipation notes. But we did sell the tax exempt note at a 4.3% yield. And the taxable note did not sell in our selling period, but the underwriter did purchase it, which that's what they do if they can't sell it, at a 5.5% yield. And they did find a buyer in the reoffer market before the end of the day. So I thank council for making those ordinance changes at the last meeting on suspension, because that allowed us to have a successful sale. And lastly, I went to the finance directors meet twice a year for Rocky River Municipal Court on November 10th. And we're presented with a deficit that is going to continue. It's larger than last year because they do not have the extra funds that they had been putting away in their capital projects and some other funds. So they're not using those. So there's a larger share. However, we are, by Ohio Revised Code, limited to, our liability is limited to the amount of fines that were collected on our behalf in the prior year. So it's $45,000. So you'll see that in the upcoming budget for 2023. And according to the clerk of courts, it's expected to continue. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Director. Moving into council committee reports, Councilwoman Williamson, Chairwoman of the Public Safety, Health and Welfare Committee. Do you have a report this evening?
I do, Mr. President. Thank you. The Public Safety, Health and Welfare Committee met virtually on Wednesday, November 9th at 7:17 p.m. Present were committee members Williamson, Kelly, and Glassburn, council members Gilchrist, Limpert, Scarl, the mayor, directors of law, finance, human resources, economic development, safety, service, and the special assistant to the mayor and guests. On the agenda for discussion was ordinance 2022-98, which reads an ordinance amending chapter 749 of the Business Regulations Code of the City of North Olmsted entitled Massage Establishments. Law Director Grow explained that this ordinance will require registration of state licensed massage therapists and further clarify the standards for those establishments that are exempt from the code requirements. Businesses exempted from the requirements of Chapter 749 are any establishments that provide massage services with a license issued by the State Medical, Chiropractic, Occupational Therapy, Board of Nursing, Cosmetology, and Barber Board. Massage establishments operating outside of these parameters must obtain a registration certification for a massage establishment and will require that any persons providing those services be licensed and in good standing through the state of Ohio. The committee meeting ended at 7:29. A motion was made to recommend approval to all of council that evening, and that motion passed with a vote of 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Limpert, Chairman of the Building, Zoning, and Development Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report this evening, Mr. President. If I could just have a moment of personal privilege. I'd like to thank, unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the high school veterans event, but I did attend a event at the Chestnut Elementary School and was very impressed by how well our schools are bringing veterans together with young people within our city. As the mayor mentioned, bringing people across all ages and all times of service. And it was a really great event, so appreciate them for bringing that to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Heeman, Chairwoman of the Recreation, Public Parks, and Buildings Committee, do you have a report this evening?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Glassburn, Chairman of the Finance Committee, do you have a report?
Yes, I do, Mr. President. Finance met virtually on November 9th at 7:29, ending at 7:45. Present were committee members Glassburn, Limpert, and Williamson, as well as council members Gilchrist, Heeman, Kelly, and Scarl. All of our directors and the mayor, save the recreation director and the special assistant to the mayor. The item of consideration was the 105, the transfer ordinance. There are a number of items in there, including raising appropriations for overages in fire, dispatch, and additional amounts for tax collection. And that will be on suspension, but there was a second version of that needed to be adopted, so we'll amend that at the conclusion of my report. It was recommended favorably 3-0, and so at this time I would move to amend 2022-105 to include the version adopted by the committee and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to amend ordinance 2022-105 made by Councilman Glassburn and seconded by Councilman Lippert. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Lippert?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Motion to amend ordinance 2022-105 passes by a vote of 7-0.
And Mr. President, just a personal point, if I may.
Of course.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank you all for the birthday well wishes and wish to extend to my normal neighbor sitting next to me, Councilman Kelly, on his victory in his this past election, and we'll see in the new year what changes will come. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Speaking of Councilman Kelly, Chairman of the Streets and Transportation Committee, you have a report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do. Transportation met at on November 9th virtually. Start time 7:46 p.m. Present were all of council with the exception of Mr. Broussard, all of the directors, with the exception of Mr. Pinchuk, the mayor, and the special assistant to the mayor and guests. We discussed 3 issues, 2022-99, 101, and 102. 99 consisted of an ordinance authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to request proposals for pavement management survey, analysis, reporting, and data hosting for public improvements, further authorizing the mayor, subject to approval of the Board of Control, to enter into an agreement with the firm selected in the RFP process. Discussed in this, 99 was originally discussed in the ARPA issue, looking for technology to drive and rate the street conditions, also sidewalk conditions, create a 5-year program to have a map of street repairs. It's currently rated right now by one individual. The new system would use 3D mapping. That was put forward to all of council at a vote of 3-0. The next issue is 101. Excuse me here. A resolution authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to make application on behalf of the City of North Olmsted for Community Development Block Grant, CDBG funds for the fiscal year 2023 for the Brook Park Road Underpass Rehabilitation Project, further authorizing the mayor to accept grant funds if awarded and to execute contract with Cuyahoga County if required and declaring an emergency. The Brook Park Underpass, currently the walkway is not ADA accessible. Also want to upgrade the guardrails and find a way to funnel the rainwater away from the walkway. Question was raised by Ms. Williamson about if there's going to be a sidewalk on the north side between the bridge and Clegg Road. That might be looked at in the future. And Mr. Scarl asked if there was any danger of falling concrete, and it wasn't believed so at that time. So this was voted on to move forward to all of council at 3-0. And then the last one, 102, was a resolution authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to make application on behalf of the City of North Olmsted to Cuyahoga County to participate in the supplemental grant program, and further authorizing the mayor to accept the grant if awarded and execute a contract with Cuyahoga County and declare an emergency. And this one is simply to allow the city to apply for this grant and to access up to $50,000 in grant if awarded. And that was moved forward 3-0 to all of council. And that ended at 8:02 p.m. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And Councilman Scarl, Chairman of the Environmental Control Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gilchrist, Chairwoman of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, do you have a report this evening?
I do not. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Are there any letters or communications to come before council at this time?
Yes, Mr. President. We received an email from Mr. John Codafan at 25914 Tallwood Drive. He sent an email this afternoon to bring forth his concerns with the S-curve on Canterbury at Tallwood Drive. He attached several pictures pointing out the area wherein 3 accidents have occurred in the last 8 years. He's concerned for his son and other children waiting for the school bus in the area. He stated that although the speed signs help, he would really like to see guardrails up to stop individuals from entering sidewalks and yards. The email in its entirety was sent to council this evening and will be included with tonight's meeting minutes. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you. Moving into audience participation. Thank you for joining tonight's council meeting. Public comment offers the opportunity for members of the public to share information and bring issues and concerns to the attention of City Council members. For those of you wishing to speak tonight, please state and spell your name and address for the clerk. If you live in a city other than North Olmsted, please state the name of that city and proceed with your comments. You will have up to 5 minutes, and we will start with those who have notified us via the chat feature. Once recognized by the clerk, please unmute your phone or computer and begin your comment. Clerk Taylor, has anyone notified us via the chat feature?
Yes, Mr. President, Mr. Sturgeon would like to speak.
Thank you.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
All right. Sorry I couldn't get my microphone or my camera to work. One thing I'd like to say is, a question is anybody from the City Hall been at any of the meetings regarding the Brook Park and 480 changes that they're starting to do? And if so, is there any kind of update that can be done with that?
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. To Mr. Surgeon's question, yes, both our economic development and our service director are in constant contact with ODOT and with the plans that are going on for not just the overpass, but the interchange that you're speaking about, and some of the other projects that we have moving forward here in the city. So we are at the table with them.
Okay. Another thing I'd like to say is, at the last meeting you were talking about doing improvement for the underpass for Brook Park Road, and I think that's a good idea. I just traveled that recently by bike with my wife, and it's not the safest thing. We did have to, I don't like the fact that in order for me to go, in this case, we were going to Burke School, my old school, by bike, and I had to cross Brook Park Road because there's no sidewalk between Brook Park and Grace. Then we went down, took that underpass, which was full of leaves and garbage on the fence inside underneath. Maybe they can remove that fence or something. I would like to see sidewalks, if it could be done at some point, between Clegg and Columbia or Clegg and Grace, anything. I don't think that people should have to cross a 4-lane highway. Next thing I would like to say is, I believe it was at the last committee meeting, you guys were talking about a retention basin. And they were talking about a dome that's going to be going on to it. And the question was brought up a couple of times about painting that retention basin so it wouldn't stand out, this aluminum dome. And I think you guys were given some bad information. The person at that meeting said that aluminum is a tricky metal and can't be painted. It has to be anodized, and that's not true. I mean, aluminum can be painted. You know, all Ford F-150s, my work truck, it's aluminum. They're painted. My patio furniture is aluminum. It's painted. Beer cans, pop cans, they're painted. And I think if that can be painted, it sure would look a lot better for the city. And the last thing I would like to say is, I would like to see somebody from the city and maybe even council, members of councils, I would encourage to look into. I'm not real happy with NOPEC. Their rates are crazy stupid. In fact, they stopped in September because they couldn't even give a decent rate for their electricity. And that rate was almost double what anybody else was paying that wasn't in the NOPEC. Other cities such as Cleveland Heights, Lakewood, and I can't think of the other ones at the top of my head, have brought this in question. Public Utilities Commission has questioned them on this. And, you know, NOPEC, in my opinion, is very misleading and deceptive practices. And I honestly think that we're doing our citizens harm by staying with them. And I know that about a year ago we signed a contract with them, and I don't know how long that contract is, but I'd like to see it when it comes up to end, that we just stop with them. Again, it's just that their ways of doing things. They send postcards out that looks like junk mail if you want to cancel or opt out. If you don't opt out within their time limit, it costs you money. Their rates have never been good. Back at the time, and when we first signed up with them in '97, it was good. As of now, anybody staying with NOPEC, in my opinion, it's not a good thing. I'd like, and I wonder if anybody can tell me, is the city compensated in any way for being with NOPEC? No, nobody knows.
Mayor.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Massarolo to address some of your specific questions, Mr. Sturgeon, regarding NOPEC, because they did temporarily give up North Olmsted residents. So I'm gonna, if Mr. President, that is okay with you to ask.
Sure,
Thank you.
certainly.
Mr. President, NOPEC sent out a letter, and I believe it went to every resident in the city that's a member of NOPEC earlier this year, that they have temporarily given up all of the residents. They are now part of the First Energy Plan, so they're getting a better rate. And currently, our residents are paying a rate that's through First Energy. It's not through NOPEC. So the plan is for NOPEC to, once NOPEC is able to become competitive again, which they believe will be sometime in the spring of 2023, then the residents that were part of NOPEC originally will go back to NOPEC. But Mr. Sturgeon is correct. NOPEC is an opt-out. So when a resident signs up with NOPEC, they're automatically signed up and they have to opt out.
Thank you.
I just don't think that, the only thing that they are canceling is the electric part of that utility, nothing with the natural gas, okay? And when they come back, we don't know what kind of rate they're going to have. They don't know what kind of rate they're going to have. And I just think that in the future, it might be something to rediscuss and look at as a city. Do we need them or do they need us, And I just think that our residents, some of them, if we can save them money, most people aren't going to look at opting out if they don't even know about it, okay? And I really think that it's time for their days should be over and done. And do we know when that contract with them ends? I know it was about a year ago it was redone.
But Mr. Sturgeon, I think we've exceeded the 5 minutes. If anyone on council wants to make a motion to extend your time, I would listen to a motion. Councilman Kelly.
I make a motion to allow Mr. Sturgeon to continue.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll be real brief. I'd just like to know just two questions. One, are we compensated as a city for signing up with NOPEC in any way, shape, or form? And two, does anybody know when that contract ends where we could have a discussion about no longer being signed up with NOPEC? I mean, it's going to be 2023. It's not 1997. We don't need this anymore with them. And that's just all I have to say.
Finance Director Kopfer, and then the mayor.
I'll defer to the mayor if she prefers. No, okay. Mr. Sturgeon, it's not like we get a dollar amount per customer that is in North Olmsted that has NOPEC. So we don't derive any direct financial benefit of who or how many people are in NOPEC for the city. They do have some grant programs that we partake in, but it has nothing to do with a certain level of customers or not. It's more based on populations. So that's not a problem. And every time they bid out for electricity, you have the right to opt out for electricity. So if they came back in the spring and said, this rate, and you don't like that rate, you can shop it around just like anyone else does. And then you stay with that company until you opt to go back to NOPEC. It's not like you go back into NOPEC every year that it gets bid out. So, but in this circumstance, it may, because they temporarily gave their customers to First Energy. But I do believe they intend on bringing them back at this point. And if I just want to make clear that you understand that natural gas is an opt-in for NOPEC. So you have to opt into the NOPEC program and pricing to have your natural gas through NOPEC. You just shop it just like you do for, you can do for electricity as well, but it's an opt-in program rather than opt-out like electricity is. And I think that's just the way the state law was written, that way back when that created this, that what was supposed to provide competition and low rates to customers.
Thank you,
Terry. I just like to say that their rates have not been competitive, good rates in electric or gas in probably the last 10 years. Okay. Thank you very much. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Jones, did you have something else?
Mr. President, just to add, I don't believe that it's a contract that our city is entered into with NOPEC. I believe that NOPEC is a council of governments. So I'll work with the law director and the finance director to get those answers to both council and to Mr. Sturgeon here in the future.
Thank you, Mayor. Clerk, are there any other persons wishing to speak?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments from the audience, we will now move into legislation.
Legislation on third reading. Ordinance 2022-93 introduced by Councilman Glassburn on behalf of all of council. An ordinance establishing and fixing the compensation for council at large members for the term of office commencing January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2027.
Mr. President, I move to adopt 22-93.
Second.
A motion to adopt ordinance 2022-93 made by Glassburn and seconded by Councilman Lippert. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Lippert?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-93 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance 2022-95 introduced by Mayor Jones, an ordinance amending and reestablishing section 141.99D of the Administrative Code entitled Composition and Organization of the Department of Public Service in order to create the position of Pretreatment Biosolids Coordinator and to amend the organizational chart accordingly.
Mr. President, I move to adopt 2022-95 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2022-95 made by Councilman Scarl and seconded by Councilwoman Gilchrist. Roll call, please.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Lippert?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-95 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Resolution 2022-96, introduced by Mayor Jones, a resolution authorizing the Director of Public Service to advertise for bids to award a contract for construction of the sanitary sewer South Interceptor Flow Equalization Tank Project as detailed in the specifications on file with the city engineer, and further authorizing the mayor, following approval of the Board of Control, to contract for the same with the lowest and best bidder.
Mr. President, I move to adopt 2022-96 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022-96 made by Councilman Scarl, seconded by Councilwoman Gilchrist. Roll call, please.
Mr. Scarl,
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Lippert,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Resolution 2022-96 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
legislation on second reading, ordinance 2022-98, introduced by Mayor Jones, an ordinance amending Chapter 749 of the Business Regulations Code of the City of North Olmsted entitled Massage Establishment. Ordinance 2022-99, introduced by Mayor Jones, an ordinance authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to request proposals for pavement management survey analysis, reporting, and data hosting for public improvements. Further authorizing the mayor, subject to approval of the Board of Control, to enter into agreement with firms selected in the RFP process. Resolution 2022-101, introduced by Mayor Jones, a resolution authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to make application on behalf of the City of North Olmsted for a Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and funds for fiscal year 2023 for the Brook Park Road Underpass Rehabilitation Project, further authorizing the mayor to accept grant funds if awarded and to execute contract with Cuyahoga County if required, and declaring an emergency. Resolution 2022-102, introduced by Mayor Jones, a resolution authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to make application on behalf of the City of North Olmsted to Cuyahoga County to participate in the supplemental grant program, and further authorizing the mayor to accept the grant if awarded and to execute a contract with Cuyahoga County and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 2022-105, introduced by Mayor Jones, an ordinance to make and transfer appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the City of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency as amended.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings. This has a number of funding items, including those that impact public welfare and safety, and I ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings for ordinance 2022-105 made by Councilman Glassburn and seconded by Councilman Lippert. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Mr. Lippert,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman,
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Scarl,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
That motion passes by a vote of 7-0. If there is anyone in the audience who wishes to address council regarding ordinance 2022-105, please speak up now to be recognized.
Seeing and hearing none, Mr. President, I would move to adopt 2022-105 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2022-105 made by Councilman Glassburn, seconded by Councilman Lippert. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Mr. Lippert,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Scarl,
Yes.
Mr. Gilchrist, or I'm sorry, Ms. Gilchrist.
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-105 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Legislation on first reading, Resolution 2022-108, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a one-year contract with TAC Computer Inc. in order to provide maintenance and repair services to computer hardware and software in the North Olmsted Police Department and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-109, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a one-year contract with TAC Computer Inc. in order to provide maintenance and repair services to computer hardware and software in the North Olmsted Fire Department and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-110, a resolution dispensing with the formal RFP process and authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Personnel Selection Services to provide entry-level and written promotional testing services, pre-employment testing, and police and fire promotional testing services, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-111, a resolution dispensing with the formal RFP process, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Pradco to provide pre-employment testing and police and fire promotional testing services.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-112, a resolution declaring Saturday, November 26, 2022 as Small Business Saturday in the city of North Olmsted and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce, place on first reading, and request suspension of the rule requiring 3 readings and formal committee review.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings and formal committee review for this measure. It is both a resolution of opinion and in the public welfare to let everyone know about our fine small businesses, and I ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review for Resolution 2022-112 made by Councilman Glassburn and seconded by Councilman Limpert. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
That motion passes by a vote of 7-0. If there is anyone in the audience who wishes to address council regarding Resolution 2022-112, please speak up now to be recognized.
Seeing and hearing none, Mr. President, I would move to adopt 2022-112 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Resolution 2022-112 made by Councilman Glassburn and seconded by Councilman Limpert. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-112 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Resolution 2022-113, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a performance agreement with Dr. Seuss Entertainment LLC to provide a concert in the North Olmsted Park band by the band Escape the Journey Tribute as part of the Saturday in the Park concert series and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce, place on first reading, and request suspension of the rule requiring 3 readings and formal committee review.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman.
thank you. I'd like to request suspension of the rules requiring 3 readings. This was presented in caucus this evening and is absolutely in the best interest of our residents and their enjoyment, public welfare. And ask for a second.
Second.
The motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings and formal committee review for Resolution 2022-113 is made by Councilwoman Heeman and seconded by Councilman Scarl. Roll call, please.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist.
Yes.
That motion passes by a vote of 7-0. If there is anyone in the audience who wishes to address council regarding Resolution 2022-113, please speak up now to be recognized.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman.
seeing none and hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to adopt 2022-113 and ask for a second.
Second.
The motion to adopt Resolution 2022-113 is made by Councilwoman Heeman and seconded by Councilman Scarl. Roll call, please.
Ms. Heeman,
Yes.
Mr. Scarl,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Resolution 2022-113 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance 2022-114, an ordinance amending Section 2 of Ordinance Number 2022-38, an ordinance authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to request proposals for professional energy conservation services and consulting for reduction of city energy consumption and utility costs. Further authorizing the mayor, subject to approval of the Board of Control, to enter into an agreement with the firm selected in the RFP process, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Ordinance 2022-115, an ordinance amending the rates of compensation for administrative personnel to add a building commissioner and part-time master plans examiner for the years 2022 and 2023, and otherwise restating the compensation rates and descriptions for various administrative and legislative personnel for the years 2022 and 2023, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Ordinance 2022-116, an ordinance establishing new and revised program fee ranges for use of park and recreation facilities, and further restating said program fees and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-117, and resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Poolside Adventures to install an aquatic climbing wall at the recreation center and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Ordinance 2022-118, an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Safety to contract for and proceed with demolition and removal of unsafe structures located at 28757 Oring Drive in the city of North Olmsted as a public nuisance, and further directing that abatement costs be certified as a lien upon said parcel pursuant to revised code 715-261 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-119, a resolution authorizing the Director of Human Resources to solicit statements of qualification, SOQ, from qualified firms or individuals to serve as the city's labor negotiator, and further authorizing the mayor, following approval of the Board of Control, to enter into a contract with the firm or individual selected in the SOQ process and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-120, resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with NP Masonry and Anthony Barber Contracting to perform construction services at the Recreation Center and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Thank you. Is there, as we discussed in caucus, is there a motion on the floor to allow city council committees and all boards and commissions to continue the option of virtual meetings through March 31st, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Who had the second? Great, thank you.
Mr. President, can I just
Yes.
clarify? Can I just clarify that was for all committees of council, city council, and all boards and commissions to meet electronically? Is that what is that what the motion was? Okay, just clarifying. Because I didn't hear city council itself. Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. Motion to allow city council, council committees, and all boards and commissions to continue the option of virtual meetings through March 31st, 2023, made by Councilwoman Williamson and seconded by Councilman Scarl. Roll call, please.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes, with comment. I do think we want to make sure that we encourage commissions that if they're having people coming to apply or get an approval for something, that they consider the residents' preference as it relates to online meetings. If there's a complex issue, sometimes the virtual meetings can be a challenge or disgruntled for the applicant. So it just would like if we can make that maybe known for the chairs of those commissions as something to think about. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist.
Yes.
That motion passes by a vote of 7-0. We're going to schedule a special council meeting for Tuesday, November 29th, 2022 at 8:00 p.m. in council chambers for the purpose of moving current legislation forward, as well as introducing the 2023 budget and engineering contract, as well as trash pickup legislation to meet your end of year deadlines. So moving into scheduling committee meetings for Tuesday, November 22nd, Councilwoman Williamson, would you like to schedule public safety, health, and welfare?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to schedule that meeting to discuss legislation numbers 2022, 108, 109, 111, and 118 at 7 p.m. And I would request that the mayor or her designee be present. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Councilwoman Heeman, Recreation, Public Parks, and Buildings meeting.
If I may, I think that you put those at 7:25 because finance was next.
You're right. Thank you for catching that. Thank you. Councilman Glassburn, would you like to schedule finance before recreation?
Yes, I would like to schedule finance at 7:10 p.m. For items, I believe it was 110, 114, 115, and 119, and request the mayor or designee for those items. And my apologies to all for the feed. My device was low on battery and I had to run to my car to have a charging source. So thank you.
All good. Thank you. So back to you, Councilwoman Heeman, for
Yes,
recreation.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. 7:25 will begin my meetings to schedule 2022-16, 17, and 120. And I would like the mayor, Director Pinchek, and the finance director, please, and anyone else that the mayor thinks is important to those items. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I also want to thank council for indulging me for having tonight's meeting virtual with a recent surgery. I just didn't know whether or not I would be able to attend in person. Turns out I could have, but hindsight, I guess. So thank you for that. With the agenda being completed and there being no further business to come before council, this meeting of November 15th, 2022 is adjourned at 8:57 p.m.